Starbucks Corporation is a chain of coffee houses that opened in 1971. Thank you for your suggestions.
From electronic ticketing to the new 777, United's employee owners have made lots of improvements. Now we're even giving airplane coffee a good name. Starbucks, on board United worldwide. Come fly our friendly skies.
Starbucks was founded in Seattle, Washington, a haven for coffee aficionados. The city was noted for its coffee before World War II, but the quality of its coffee had declined so much by the late 1960s that resident Gordon Bowker made pilgrimages to Vancouver, British Columbia to buy his coffee beans there. His point of reference for the beverage was dark, delicious coffee he had discovered in Italy. Soon Bowker, then a writer for Seattle Magazine, was making runs for friends as well. When Seattle folded, two of Bowker's friends, Jerry Baldwin, an English teacher, and Zev Siegel, a history teacher, also happened to be seeking new ventures. The three banded together and literally built their first store. They raised $1,350 apiece, borrowed another $5,000, and picked the name Starbucks for the punchy st sound and its reference to the coffee-loving first mate in Moby Dick, and then designed a two-tailed siren for a logo and set out to learn about coffee. The coffee shop was located at Seattle's Pike Place Market. The shop sold coffee beans, tea, spices, coffee machines, and accessories. Siegel went to Berkeley, California to learn from a Dutchman, Alfred Peet, who ran Peet's Coffee, which had been a legend among coffee drinkers since 1966. Peet's approach to coffee beans became the cornerstone for Starbucks' reputation. High-grade Arabica beans roasted to a dark extreme by a trained perfectionist roaster. Starbucks bought its coffee from Peet's for its first 9 months, giving away cups of coffee to hook customers. The plan worked, and by 1972, the three founders had opened a second store in University Village and invested in a Probat roaster. Baldwin became the young company's first roaster. Within its first decade, Starbucks had opened stores in Bellevue, Capitol Hill, and University Way. By 1982, the original entrepreneurs had a solid retail business of 5 stores, a small roasting facility, and a wholesale business that sold coffee, primarily to local restaurants. The first of the company's growth versus ethos challenge came at this stage. How does one maintain a near fanatical dedication to freshness and wholesale? Starbucks insisted that the shelf life of coffee is less than 14 days after roasting. As a result, they donated all 8-day coffee to charity. In 1982, Starbucks hired Howard Schultz to manage the company's retail sales and marketing. Schultz took a buying trip to Italy, where another revelation took place. Wandering the piazzas of Milan, Schultz was captivated by the culture of coffee and the romance of Italian coffee bars. Milan had about 1,700 espresso bars, which was a third center for Italians after work and home. Schultz returned home determined to bring Italian coffee bars to the United States, but found his bosses reluctant, being still more dedicated to retailing coffee. Schultz would leave the company to start his own coffee chain. 1983, Starbucks bought Peet's Coffee, which had by then become a 5-store operation itself. By the mid-1980s, Starbucks was encountering frustration. The wholesale market had been reconfigured by the popularity of flavored coffees, which Starbucks resolutely refused to produce. The founders were also seeking to pursue other ventures as well. In 1986, Schultz approached his old colleagues with an attractive offer. How about $4 million for the 6-unit Starbucks chain? They sold. In 1987, the company became Starbucks Corporation and prepared to go national. In August of 1987, Starbucks Corporation had 11 stores and fewer than 100 employees. In October of that year, it opened its first store in Chicago. By 1989, there were 9 Chicago Starbucks where employees trained by Seattle managers served coffee roasted in the Seattle plant. Their methods were costly, using high-grade Arabica beans and expensive dark roasting, while suffering the financial consequences of snubbing the supermarket and wholesale markets. Nevertheless, Starbucks markets were growing rapidly. Sales of the specialty coffee in the United States grew from $50 million in 1983 to $500 million 5 years later. In 1988, Starbucks introduced the mail-order catalog, and by the end of that year, the company was serving mail-order customers in every state and operating a total of 33 stores. Starbucks also developed a reputation for treating its employees well. In 1991, it became the first privately held company in history to establish an employee stock option program that included part-timers. Starbucks also offered health and dental benefits to both full and part-time employees. As a result, the company had a turnover rate that was very low for the food service industry. The company went public in 1992. The same year it opened its first stores in San Francisco, San Diego, Orange County, and Denver. Its stores totaled 165 by year's end. The company began special relationships with Nordstrom's Inc. and Barnes & Noble, offering coffee to shoppers at both chains. Starbucks' first East Coast store opened in 1993 in a premier location in Washington, D.C. The chain had 275 stores by the end of 1993 and 425 by 1994. Starbucks broke into the important new markets in 1994, including Minneapolis, Boston, New York, Atlanta, Dallas, and Houston, and purchased the Coffee Connection, a 23-store rival based in Boston, for $23 million, making it a wholly owned subsidiary. Perhaps the most significant part of this acquisition was the fact that the chain, which was founded by George Howell, was also the birthplace of still yet another industry-altering innovation, the Frappuccino. The trademarked blend of espresso, milk, ice, and sugar debuted in 1992. Starbucks also announced a partnership with Pepsi-Cola to develop a new ready-to-drink coffee beverage. After Starbucks debuted a frozen coffee drink called the Frappuccino in its stores in the summer of 1995, resulting in a sales bonanza, the partnership with Pepsi began rolling out a bottled version in grocery, convenience, and drug stores the following year. Starbucks began supplying coffee for United Airlines and launched a line of Starbucks compilation music CDs, which were sold in its coffeehouses. In 1997, Starbucks continued to expand across the country and internationally, helping the total number of units reach an astounding 1,412 by year's end. As this rapid growth continued, the company began to be needled by late-night talk show hosts for its seeming Starbucks on every corner expansion strategy, while a growing number of owners and patrons of local coffee shops began speaking out and demonstrating against what they considered overly aggressive and even predatory moves into new territory. Critics complained that the company was deliberately locating its units near local coffee merchants to siphon off sales, sometimes placing a Starbucks directly across the street. The number of North American locations approached 2,200 by early 2000. Always searching for new revenue streams, Starbucks in 1998 entered into a long-term licensing agreement with Kraft Foods Incorporated for marketing and distribution of Starbucks whole bean and ground coffee into grocery, warehouse club, and mass merchandise stores. The company also began experimenting with full-service casual restaurants called Cafe Starbucks. Starbucks had already developed its own in-house tea brand called Infusia. It was replaced when Starbucks acquired Tazo Tea Company, a Portland, Oregon-based maker of premium teas and related products with distribution through 5,000 retail outlets. Image problems continue to crop up for the rapidly growing company, whose 1999 revenues of $1.68 billion was nearly 6 times the figure of 5 years earlier. Allegations that the coffee company was buying its beans from wholesalers who were paying farmers what amounted to poverty wages surfaced. Starbucks announced that it would buy more coffee certified as fair trade, meaning that the farmers who grew it received more than market price for their crop, sometimes as high as 3 times the 30 cents per pound they typically received. Starbucks' rate of expansion accelerated in the early 2000s after opening about 1,200 new stores each year from 2001 to 2004. The company added nearly 1,700 new outlets in 2005, pushing the chain past the 10,000 unit mark. About 1,150 of the units opened in 2005 were located in the United States, bringing the domestic total to 7,300. Even this figure did not represent a saturated market, as Starbucks was now aiming to eventually have 15,000 stores in the United States market alone. In September of 2006, rival Dietrich Coffee announced that it would sell most of its company-owned retail stores to Starbucks, including most locations of Oregon-based Coffee People, escalating the regional coffee wars. Starbucks converted the Dietrich Coffee and Coffee People locations to Starbucks. During the Great Recession from February of 2008 to January of 2009, Starbucks terminated an estimated 18,400 jobs and began closing 977 stores worldwide. On June 25, 2013, Starbucks began to post calorie counts on menus for drinks and pastries in all of its U.S. stores. On April 12, 2018, 2 men were arrested in Philadelphia Starbucks location after a manager claimed the 2 were trespassing. The arrest led to protests due to the apparently racially motivated nature. CEO Kevin Johnson later apologized for the incident, and the company declined to press charges. Johnson also announced that the company would close some 8,000 locations on May 29th for a seminar about racial bias in order to prevent future events similar to those that occurred in Philadelphia. In July of 2019, Starbucks announced that it would no longer be selling newspapers in its cafes. It was also announced that kiosks for grab-and-go snacks and bags of whole bean coffee would be removed from stores beginning in September of 2019. During the pandemic, Starbucks' business suffered due to the COVID restrictions. Some locations even closed. Since then, Starbucks employees have fought hard to unionize. In August of 2022, after months of suspension due to the Russian invasion of Ukraine, Starbucks sold all of its stores in Russia to the Russian rapper Tomati. The stores were rebranded as Stars Coffee and are very similar to the former stores. The company's headquarters is in Seattle, Washington. As of February of 2023, Starbucks has 36,170 locations open across 83 countries, with 61% of the locations operating in the United States and China, and the rest operating elsewhere. Thank you for watching. If you like this content, and if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. Thanks.